Lesson 23. In lesson 23, you're going to need to get out a notebook and you're going to need to rewrite the equations as I show them. You may need to pause the video along the way to get everything written down. I'm going to be doing 2 videos on lesson 23, one with numbers 1 and 2, and then the next video will be with numbers 3 and 4. So in this lesson, we're going to be rewriting these symbols of stars as negative x's or the opposite of x. All we're doing is we're taking this horizontal line right here and we're sliding it out to the side like this. So this actually means the opposite of x, just like this means the opposite of positive 3. We call it negative 3, and so this can also be referred to as negative x. It can be referred to as the opposite of x. Both are appropriate. The most common way you're going to hear it is negative x. The other thing you need to know is when you only have one of them, you need to remember that there's a little invisible 1 there. A number 1. In algebra, generally when there's only one of something, one of a variable, we don't write the little invisible 1, but it comes in handy to write it every once in a while. Also in this lesson, we're going to be using the distributive property, which means we're going to have some parentheses, and in algebra, when we have parentheses, if we can get rid of the parentheses or work within the parentheses first, that's what we want to do. So problem number 1 looks like this, and what I want you to do right now is pause the video and write down the problem exactly as it is on your worksheet. Okay. This does have parentheses, and so we have to deal with the parentheses. You'll also notice we have a subtraction sign here, and it's always good in algebra to use the strategy of changing the subtraction to an addition and changing the sign on the next number to its opposite. Using addition in algebra is much less complicated than subtracting. So on this next line, I have rewritten the equation with the addition and the negative 2, and I have drawn the arrows showing that I'm going to be distributing this negative 2 throughout the parentheses. I also rewrote this star as negative x, or the opposite of x. And then I just rewrote everything that I don't have to change below so that the equation is still an equation. Pause the video if you need to. Make sure you draw the arrows showing where that 2 is going to be distributed throughout the parentheses. The next step is to distribute that 2. So we're going to take a negative 2 times a negative x. A negative times a negative is a positive. And 2 times x, or here I drew in the little invisible 1, 2 times 1 is 2, and the x is attached to the number. So the x comes along with it, comes along for the ride, I say. Then we have to take this negative 2 and we have to distribute it over to the positive 4. So negative 2 times positive 4 is negative 8. So there's my -8 block. On the right hand side, I don't have to do anything, So I'm just rewriting those down below. My next step is going to be to combine like terms. In other words, on each side of the equal sign, I'm going to look and see if I have things that are the same. And here I can see I have 3 x's, which would be 3 blue pawns, and I have 2 x's, which would be 2 blue pawns. So I can combine those two together and make 5 blue pawns. So I have 5 x's plus a -8 block is equal to 2 x's plus a 1 block. I can't combine anything on the right hand side. It's as simple as it can be. So now I'm ready to set this up on my board. I have 5 blue pawns and an 8 block, -8 block, and on the other side I have 2 blue pawns and a 1 block. Start on the side with the least number of pawns, pull those down, pull the same number down on the other side. That's a legal move. Now I'm going to pull this 8 block down, and I need an 8 block on the other side to pull down. Since I don't have one, I'm going to use my 0 pair with 8s, a green 8 and a red 8, and I'm going to add them to that side, the right hand side, because that's the side I need one so I can pull down. So what I'm left with is 3 times something equals this quantity, which is 9. 8 plus 1 is 9. So 3 times 3 would give me 9. So I know that my x value is going to be 3, which means that my star, or my opposite of x, is going to be -3. So on my paper, I'm going to write that x is equal to 3. X is equal to 3. And you can see I have crossed this out and I've written -x, and it is equal to the opposite of 3. So now I have to do my check. And my check, I have to move everything back up to the top to determine what my check is going to be. So I move my blocks and my pawns back up. I can see that I have this 0 pair here. I can get rid of that easily. And now I can count by 3s. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, plus a -8 is 7. And over on this side, I have 3, 6 plus 1 is 7. So my check for this problem is 7 equals 7. Next problem. My next problem, as it's written in the paper, is star minus 2 times, in parentheses, 2x plus 1, close parentheses, equals 3 stars plus -10. So what am I going to do? I'm going to rewrite my stars as -x's, and I'm going to change my subtraction to addition. This becomes -x. I'm going to change my subtraction to an addition, which changes the sign on my 2 to a -2. I still have 2x plus 1 inside the parentheses, but I'm going to draw my arrows to show my distribution. And on the right hand side, I'm going to rewrite this star as the opposite of x, or a -x. Remember, there's a little invisible 1 right in front of that x. and then I have plus a negative 10. So when I go to rewrite, I'm going to cover that up for a minute. I'm going to leave my negative x there, and I'm going to distribute my negative 2 through my parentheses, which means negative 2 times 2x is going to give me negative 4x, because a negative times a positive is a negative, and 2 times 2 is 4, and the x comes along for the ride. Negative 2 times positive 1, negative times positive is negative, and 2 times 1 is 2. Now, right here, when I drew in that little 1 there, I can see that a positive 3 times a negative 1 is a negative 3, and the x comes along for the ride. So this is a negative 3x plus negative 10. Now I can look and I can see if there's anything I can combine to simplify it. And I can see on the left I'm going to have a white pawn right here and 4 white pawns right here and a red block. So I can combine these white pawns together and make 5 white pawns. So I'm going to have negative 5x plus negative 2 equals negative 3x plus negative 10. Pause the video to write that down if you don't have it written down at this time. Okay, to set it up then, I'm going to have 5, let's see, I'm going to have 5 white pawns on the left and a negative 2 block, and on the right I'm going to have 3 white pawns and I'm going to have a negative 10 block. Now, right now I can see I've got pawns and numbers on both sides. The good news is my pawns are all the same color and my blocks are all the same color. So I'm actually, instead of using a negative 10 block as they have drawn right here, I'm going to change this out so that I still have a quantity of negative 10, but I'm going to use a 2 plus something, a negative 2 plus something gives me a negative 10. And I know that a negative 8 plus a negative 2 gives me negative 10. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm probably going to want to pull down this 2 block over here. I can see that I have the least number of pawns on the right hand side, so I'm going to pull all 3 of those down. If I pull those 3 down, I pull 3 down on the other side, and then I'm left with 2 pawns and a 2 block equals 8 plus, or negative, excuse me, 2 pawns plus a negative 2 equals negative 8 plus negative 2, which is still negative 10. Now I'm going to pull down that 2, and I can pull down this 2. It just saved me a step from having to trade them out at this point. So I have 2 white pawns added together equal negative 8. So a negative plus a negative equals a negative. Negative 4 plus negative 4 is negative 8. So on my sheet, I'm going to write that my white pawns, which are the opposite of x, are equal to negative 4, which means that my x value is 4. So now to do my check, I have to move everything back up. And when I move everything back up, I'm going to just go ahead and make that a 10, just so I don't have so much stuff on my mat. I'm going to count, and each of these white pawns is negative 4. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. So 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. This is negative 20 over here. This is negative 2. When I add a negative to a negative, I just add the values and take the negative sign. So negative 20 plus negative 2 is negative 22. Over on this side, I have negative 4, negative 8, negative 12. This is negative 12. Negative 12 plus a negative 10 is negative 22. So my check is negative 22 is equal to negative 22. That's the end for this video. Numbers 3 and 4 will be on the next video.